So, blast plates, do they work? Do they help? So the idea here is, and these were made by a company called More Performance. They're out of business now. I found these used for about, I think I paid 200 or 250 shipped. There's another company that makes a similar plate now that's not nearly as thick, called, I think, Keen or Kind Performance. They're about the same price. These were at one point like $800 new, which I don't know if I'd want to pay $800 to find out if they work, but do they work? I don't know. The idea is they bolt on the side of the transmission case like this and sandwich from either side to strengthen this area of the transmission here, which if you look, you could see there's a lot of ribs added for strengthening here, but the case is fairly thin here, and it goes back to the original design of these transmissions when they were behind engines making 150 horsepower, and it didn't matter. So, you know, there's a lot of debate online about whether they work or not. My honest opinion is they're somewhat of a Band-Aid, but Band-Aids help. I think there are two different problems with these transmissions. I think the case is weak, and I think that the gears are weak. And I'll tell you why I think the case is weak, and that's still a problem, is people spend $3,500 or $5,000, whatever it costs now for PPG gears, and still sometimes break them even at low power levels, like 350 wheel. There's some that live and work really good. I think if you really want a strong 5-speed and you add the PPGs, you should add a blast plate like this probably to get the most for your dollar. There are people online that no one's really tested these to figure out, do they really work or not? Everything's inconclusive. I don't even know that I'm going to get an answer. But with my HTA 71 Turbo here, we're going to be making in the neighborhood of 350 to 400 wheel, whether depending on whether or not I put my meth injection kit on, which, these transmissions generally are safe to about 300 wheel. If you don't beat the hell out of them, you could break them with less, but generally 300 wheel is considered a nice safe limit for the what are these cars? GD? The 07 and down 5-speed transmissions. The 02, 03 are considered to be weaker. What's in my car is actually a very early 04, so I think it's essentially the same as in 03. Maybe that change happened in 03. I don't know. There's a lot of pissing matches on the internet, but generally the 08 and up is supposed to be stronger. It's got the same gears as like the Legacy GTs, or early on they called them the what did they call those? Not the R spec. Maybe, no, they call them the STI gears for the 5-speed. That's a common, thing to stick in these. If I remember the name, I'll stick it in a link below. But, yeah, so I'm going to put these on. I don't know that we're going to find out if they really work or not, but I feel like it can't hurt. There was a guy online claiming to make like 700 wheel, but he never really seemed to beat the car. But I think what these will help is, I think you could break these transmissions with power, and you could break them with impact. If you break, the gears can't take an impact, but they can probably hold a fair amount of power. It's probably it's the case that flexes under power, right? If you roll into it from like a highway speed and you break something, it's probably case flex that's doing it. And case flex is a problem that breaks transmissions and gear differentials, because when the case flexes, the gear mesh changes ever so slightly, and suddenly, it puts a lot more pressure in different areas on the gears that allow them to break. So I don't know if these really work or not. If you have experience with them, leave them in the comments. There was the guy on Naziak that was supposedly making 700 wheel that never really came back and told us if he pushed it or not. There was also a guy on Naziak running low 11s with a 5-speed that he had built with Legacy GT gears. And he was doing it without blast plates and later added blast plates and was running in the 10s. And I think he had like 20 or 30 passes on the car. Don't know if it was the gears that were helping, the blast plates, maybe a combination of both. But I am going to install them on this transmission. This is not the transmission that was in my car. My transmission grinds downshifting into first. This came out of a car that I parted out, and I know it's good. Unfortunately, because I have that 0203 style transmission, I have the male axle stubs, so I had to buy axles to put in this car to use this transmission. So, gonna do all that. I changed the seals, all three, tail shaft and both axle seals. I'm gonna put the blast plates on and then swing this tranny into my car and move forward with dropping the motor back in. The motor's pretty much ready to go. I decapped my injectors and sent them out for flow testing and cleaning. I haven't gotten them back yet, so I'm just going to drop this in with these injectors on here. That way I can start the car up, check it for leaks, maybe motor it around the neighborhood without getting on it, make sure everything seems good, and then when those injectors come back in, I'll swap those in. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to get to it. So I'm out here, it's like 10 o'clock at night. It's February 6th. It's been a while. Finally got this Subaru back together and running. I knew once I had to go back to work, it was going to end up dragging out, and it did. It's been running for a little over a week now, and this is what's going on with it. So the HTA 71 honestly seems to work very nice to me. Looking at them, it's side by side with the VF48. I was a little skeptical. The wheel's definitely bigger, but it's not that big of a turbo. And if you read around online, you know, they don't make that turbo anymore, but Subaru people are funny because everything that works on every other car, Subaru people think is a problem. But there seemed to be a lot of hate for this turbo. I got it for $425 shipped, and it looked really good, clean, like hardly used. So I was like, screw it, let's do it. I was just looking for an FP Green. I found it on Marketplace. But anyway, I sent my injectors out. I had them flow tested. Amazingly, after cleaning, they were all within 1 cc of each other. So they flowed right at 900 cc's. Before cleaning, 2 were at like 875 and 2 were around 840. So cleaning, flow testing was a good idea. After decapping, anyway, got the car running. No real issues, but you know, just working on the tune a little bit. Boost controller set, you know, all the way out. It made about 14 pounds and felt pretty strong. It almost felt as torquey as the VF48 did, but it held on up top. You know, was making still like 15 at redline. Again, boost controller all the way out, so basically no wastegate duty cycle. So I cranked in 2 turns. It barely made a difference. I actually cranked in 2 turns, and I had started with 4 degrees of timing pulled. So I cranked in 2 turns, added 1 degree of timing. The boost actually dropped because as you add timing, a lot of times you'll lose a little bit of boost. So the 2 turns didn't seem to make that much of a difference. So I turned it like, I shouldn't have gone that much, but I went 4 turns. Hit it in first gear, maxed out the MAF. Luckily, it didn't lean out that much because I had everything scaled rich. But maxed out the MAF, 20 and a half pounds, maxed it out, you know, went over 4.7 volts and over 300 grams per second with the stock air box, which I had in here. So anyway, turned it back down, got the injectors dialed in. They scaled right at, I had them at around 850, but I dropped them to 840 because everyone uses 840. And now I have to scale this aftermarket MAF. 840, just put it rounding down on the air fuel ratio instead of up. So I have it, it's supposed to be 11.1 at wide open throttle. At 840, it's going 11.0. 850 is more like 11.2 by the time we hit redline. But anyway, so I had this big MAF tube, so I kind of just cut it a little bit. This is from a rotated setup, so it's meant to come from here over to here. Buyer's free. It's 3 inches, so it should do the trick. So anyway, I just put that on with this lovely Spectra filter. It actually looks okay. I guess the blue kind of matches the car. And yeah, I got to dial this thing in. When I initially turned the boost down, it came down to like 18 pounds. 18 pounds, hands down, this will outrun the VF48, even with 3 degrees less timing. I took another turn out of it because it was still hitting 4.7 volts and going to 300 grams per second, or just under. So it was starting to lean out. So anyway, big math on here, and I math hacked it. So hopefully I set my tables all up right, because when you do the math hack, you gotta divide all your load values by 2 along with your injectors. So I'm gonna flash this and take it for a ride, and hopefully it works good, and I can crank the boost back in, because 21 pounds pulled hard. 21 pounds felt like 350 wheel, honestly, even with this timing in it, maybe even a tad more. So I probably won't add 3 more degrees back in. If it feels good, I'll probably just add 1, leave it 2 degrees conservative, and run it right at around 21 pounds, because anything more, I need an aftermarket map sensor. I don't know if I want to get into that now. I'm thinking of selling this car. So I might just stop at 21 pounds, drive it for a little while, and sell it. My original plan was to put my meth kit on it and run it like 24 pounds, get an aftermarket map sensor. But I think priorities are changing a little bit, so might just get it running good and sell it. But anyway, just figured I'd let you know what's going on with this thing.